This episode is brought to you by Used Photo Pro.
So today, here at this mall, I'm going to be shooting this Canon EOS 650. I want to show you how shooting film can actually be cheap. So let's get to it. So, the words cheap and film photography don't necessarily go hand in hand, especially as of these last few years. Oh, how I miss 2015. Simpler times. Back when both film and film cameras were decently priced. Basically sold as a steal. If I were to pick up a Leica M6 back then, I'd probably maybe spend $1,000 instead of the $3,000 that I spent a few years ago. It's just too bad I can't hop in a DeLorean and visit my past. Probably best not to dwell on. But here in 2024, I think I found a potential cheat code to help stretch that film photography dollar, finding a camera that's, well, decently priced and does not sacrifice an inch of image quality. While everyone's out here talking about how great Leicas, Mamiyas, and Hasselblads are, I'm gonna look you straight in the eye and say, you don't need any of that baloney. I guess I am also one of those guys talking about those other camera brands. But let's not think about that right now. What if I told you today you could spend less than $100 on a fantastic setup? Would you believe me? Well, I guess there's only one way to find out. Yeah, this place is dead. This is crazy. I think I'm gonna get some good stuff here. I'm gonna go with Pro Image. Pro Image is one of the cheapest films out there, and it's kind of, I think, starting to become my jam. Now let's travel back into the past and talk about the very first Canon camera to ever introduce autofocus into their film photography lineup. In 1987, the Canon EOS 650 and the 620 were introduced into the market, rocking that new EOS lens mount. That lens mount lasted on Canon cameras for the next 31 years. That's a hell of a long time. That's older than my brother is. Not by much though. Overall, this camera is quite easy to understand and operate. But it does have one major downfall that, well, I don't know, might be a deal breaker to some. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Better not just bring the mood down now. That's no fun. Putting on a 50 mil because I feel like a 50 might be good for this location. And it's a 1.8. Give me a little bit more light. Now, if you have seen my channel throughout the years, you know that I own a Canon EOS 1N, and that was released in 1994. And back then, I purchased that camera because I'm a camera slut. Can you blame me? But I also did own some EOS lenses from college. The Canon 60D was actually my first camera I purchased with big boy money. But you can think of this EOS 650 as a light version of the EOS 1N. And honestly, at the end of the day, you probably don't even need all that camera that the EOS 1N offers. I mean, maybe you do, but chances are you don't. Over the years of 1987 to 2004, when the last film camera popped out of Canon's factories, around 32 different EOS cameras were made, all stemming from this one 650. Now let me give you a rundown of all the features that this camera has to offer. On the top, you have your camera mode button, exposure compensation, and obviously the on and off selector. That green box here is actually a fully automatic mode. Don't think for yourself, fall in line, you sheep mode. Bring your eye up to the camera and just snap away. Kind of like a point and shoot, really. Probably with better quality though. And bigger. Can't fit in your pocket. On the right hand side, you have the LCD showing all of your camera settings alongside the shutter release button and a jog wheel for selecting your camera settings. And under this little flappy flap, you have your drive mode, your focus modes, and your ISO override if you think that you know better than the DX code, which you might. Other cameras of the time actually have similar features as well, but this is not where this overall puppy shines. It shines in the price and the lenses. Next, let's move on to the shooting modes, 4 of which you probably are aware of if you've ever shot a camera ever. You have your manual mode, your program mode, shutter priority, aperture priority, and your depth mode. That first and last being the ones I actually want to talk about the most. Depth mode is actually one of the most futuristic shits I've ever heard of. In this mode, you focus on 2 separate points in your scene, an A mark and a B mark. Say, a poo in the foreground and a poo in the background. Then, when you take a photo, that camera actually chooses the correct shutter and aperture to get both those poos and points in focus. Like I said, some futuristic shit. Overall, do I think this mode is useless? Yes, I do. In practice, it's kind of slow. I guess I could see it being helpful if you're in a crowd where you want like the furthest person and the closest person to be in focus. But then honestly, you probably know how to use your camera in the first place and the settings to use to achieve that effect anyway. But it is cool. Now, if I was a betting man, I don't think this guest services is open. Or has been open for a while. So that was a lot of fun. Some of the people, I went in some of the stores there, and some of them were like, yeah, this place isn't gonna stay open that much longer. Like, there's people walking around, kind of like getting their exercise. It's eerily a ghost town in there. I felt watched, and that's because I was very much watched. A security guard came up to me and was like, you can't take no photos here, bro. And I was like, but peace. And he's like, okay, only because you're cute. Just, if caught, I didn't see ya. So that was about it. He was a real chill guy. I think I'm gonna like kind of sweep the perimeter here and kind of like do a little bit of look-sees and see what I can see if I can find some cool like images outside. If not, then I'm gonna go somewhere else. Now to the manual mode, which at first glance you might think is the mode that you'll probably want to use the most, coming from a fully manual camera. But the way that this camera decided to implement choosing your shutter and aperture is quite bizarre. See, my EOS 1N is actually pretty easy. In manual mode, the jog wheel on the top selects your shutter, and the jog wheel on the back adjusts your aperture. And your exposure meter is on the side in the viewfinder. All aspects easy to see and adjust. However, the EOS 650, you only have one jog wheel to select both, defaulting as your shutter selection. It's not until you press the M button over on the left-hand side of the lens mount where the dial becomes an aperture selector. Sure, that doesn't sound that bad. Well, you might want to sit back. The only way for you to know if your exposure is correct is by pressing that button down. Now your shutter speed information inside the viewfinder changes to a 2-digit Da Vinci Code style lettering system. OP for open aperture, meaning you're underexposed. CL for closed aperture, meaning you're overexposed. And OO, meaning you're good to go. No blinking, no exposure needle, no nothing to tell you that your exposure is correct unless you hit that button. Ultimately, that means you have to do a little dance between the shutter and the aperture wheel. Honestly, I can't tell you how frustrating that is, especially coming from the Canon EOS 1N. But however, there is good news. There is one simple fix. Just don't shoot in manual mode. It's that simple. At the end of the day, this camera is rock solid in other aspects, and you probably don't really need manual mode in the first place. Most of the time when I use this camera, and even the EOS 1N, I just put it in aperture priority mode, and that does the trick. The meter on these things are baller, so yeah. Check out this photo of my cousin. Look how sharp this lens is. Look at his eye. His eye is so sharp. It's just straight fire. Another thing about this camera that differs from the EOS 1N is that the 650 only has a single center autofocus point. And depending on the lens you go with, it could be a little slower than usual to focus. It's pretty snappy on this 50mm though. Now on to the biggest part of the camera that really makes the biggest difference. And it's not even the camera at all. The lenses. The great thing about the EOS camera system from the late 80s all the way to the 2000s is that it can be used with the newest EF glass out there. And these lenses come at various price points. In most of the images today, I've used the nifty 50 1.8, but I also frequently use my 28 2.8, which I've had for like 15 years. Both not expensive lenses, and the quality is top notch. The 28 is a little weird with its the focus motor. It's like, it's kind of loud and slow, but it's still great. Honestly, I could put these images against my Voigtlander lenses on my Leica, and honestly, you wouldn't know the difference. But before we hop into our DeLorean and head to Hogwarts, let me tell you about today's sponsor, Use Photo Pro. UP has one of the largest selections of used camera gear in the country. They have everything from lenses to film cameras to medium format, and they even have digital, if that's your thing. Why buy a brand new mirrorless when you can find yourself a gently used mirrorless for digitizing your film photos? I mean, I guess you could shoot it normally as well, but I've never thought about doing that. Maybe I should. Use Photo Pro guarantees the gear that you see on their website is without a doubt the gear that you receive in the mail. No funny business. This way you know exactly what you're getting when you open that glorious package. And with their easy to understand grading system mixed with their 180-day warranty, you will be rest assured about the quality of the gear that you buy. So if you're in the market to love on some new to you, used camera gear or lenses, hit up Use Photo Pro for more. Their camera library is extensive, and I guarantee you will get lost in the amount of gear that you could buy today. Okay, let's go get some butterbeer now. Now, let's talk about this giant ass elephant in the DeLorean. And no, it is not the recasting of Eric Schultz. A big part of why us film addicts like film cameras is because we are shallow and vapid critters, and we really just care about the looks of the cameras. Don't lie to yourself. That's the reason the AE1 costs the price that it does, and even the Nikon F3. And let's not talk about the M6. These electronic EOS cameras look like modern day slices of plastic, not really inspiring our ego to go pick them up. They're kind of like Neville Longbottom in the first Harry Potter. Adorkable. But really, then you get to that last Harry Potter, and those EOS Canon bods get hot. And then you realize it was him all along. I think we're talking about Harry Potter now. Yet again, this EF glass is just so sharp. Just solidifies what I said earlier. And this was wide open at 1.8. Canon just knew what was up. Like I said earlier, Canon released 32 electronic film cameras rocking this EF mount. And if this 650 is where it started out, there's no doubt that they improved model after model. I mean, look at the EOS 1N. And not to mention that the EF lens lineup is one of the healthiest lens lineups on the planet. I guarantee you can find a perfectly used EOS lens for no money at all. And that's the entire point of this video. At this point, you can find any one of these older EOS bodies anywhere between $35 to $65, depending on the condition. And the lenses are kind of in the same price bracket. Maybe a little bit more, it just depends. But I don't know, that's a great camera for under $100, like I promised. All I'm saying is that you don't need to get yourself a $3,000 Leica just because I or any of the fools on the internet use them. I mean, but if you want to, there's nothing wrong with it. But as this video shows, you pick up any one of these 32 cameras and you will get amazing results. I mean, providing that you are actually good at photography. You do kind of need that. At the end of the day, this camera is awesome because of its price and what it offers. And couple that with the sheer fact that there are millions of Canon lenses in this universe, and they're all at a price point that is undeniable. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thank you to Used Photo Pro for lending me this camera. I had a blast shooting the very first EOS camera on the market. So, until next time, go shoot some